The decision to buy a rental property is an exciting one. In fact, the excitement grows more and more each day you get closer to purchasing your first investment property. Whether you are a landlord with one rental unit or someone who owns hundreds of properties, working with new tenants is always going to be stressful. You must always start off on the right foot. That's why in this video, I want to give you the best tips and tricks on how to screen tenants for a rental property. This is exactly how you can increase your chances of getting a reliable tenant that pays on time and takes care of your property. And if you stay until the end, you'll know exactly what red flags to stay away from when choosing a tenant. So without wasting any time, here are 7 steps to properly screen tenants for a rental property. Number 1. Pre-screen tenants. Let's be honest, a quick search on Google for how to screen tenants will show you that there are thousands of websites with advice on what to look for in a tenant when renting your property to them. Pre-screening potential tenants is the first step in the process of renting out an investment property. By checking social media accounts and conducting a basic online search, you may be able to gather information about a potential tenant that can help you decide whether or not to consider them for your property. Asking pre-screening questions or including them on the application can also be helpful in determining whether a potential tenant is a good fit. But we will dive more on that on step 2. So what advantages are there in pre-screening tenants? Well, there are 2 things that does for you. Number 1, it helps you find the best fit for your property. By gathering the necessary information, you can get a better sense of whether a potential tenant is a good fit for your property and your rental business. Number 2, it saves you time and money. Pre-screening tenants can help you narrow down the pool of applicants, so you don't have to spend as much time and resources on the full screening process. But I have to warn you though, it's important to keep in mind that while pre-screening can be useful, it is not a substitute for a thorough background check, which is necessary to make a fully informed decision. Keep watching because in a minute I will tell you a hack I've been doing lately in conducting a credit check with tenants while asking for important information. Number 2, use a rental application. The idea here is to use a rental application form to pre-screen potential tenants for your property. The application should clearly outline the rules and expectations for tenants and include questions that will help you assess whether a potential tenant is a good fit for your property. This may include questions about basic contact information, employment and income, current and previous addresses, family information, as well as pet and smoking preferences. In this process, make sure that all residents and co-signers of a rental property complete a rental application form. You can utilize rental platforms such as apartments.com that will allow potential tenants to fill out a completely free application without costing you a dime. Ensure that all criteria on the application are filled out completely and that any application that are incomplete are returned to the applicant for completion. Having all residents and co-signers complete a rental application can help you make an informed decision about who to rent to and can protect your investment. It is also a good idea to have a clear and thorough rental application form that includes all necessary information and is properly formatted. There are various templates available online that can be helpful in creating a rental application form. Trust me, this can help you weed out unfit applicants and save time and energy in the process. Number 3, do a background check. Rental properties are a great way to make some extra money, but they can also be a financial liability if you don't know what you're doing. If you don't do your due diligence and make sure that the tenant who's moving into your property is reliable, you could end up losing hundreds or even thousands of dollars on unpaid rent or damaged property. I'm telling you, be aware of any potential issues that could arise from renting to a tenant with a history of financial issues, evictions, or serious criminal activity, as these could potentially expose you and other tenants to danger of financial risk. While it is generally advisable to be cautious about renting to a tenant with a criminal record, it is important to consider the specifics of the case before making a financial decision. Some questions to consider might include the age of the tenant at the time of the offense, the circumstances surrounding the matter, the length of the time since the release from any relevant confinement, and any rehabilitation efforts that the tenant may have undertaken. Approach these matters with an open mind and consider the individual circumstances before making a final decision. Number 4. Conduct a credit check. You may not have realized it, but your potential tenant's credit score could be the difference between a great rental and a nightmare scenario. A credit check can provide information about a potential tenant's credit history and credit score, which can be useful in determining whether they are likely to be able to make rent payments on time. Credit scores are typically ordered from one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. Landlords generally prefer tenants with credit scores of 620 or higher, although this may vary depending on the individual landlord's preferences and risk tolerance. Here's the thing I've been doing lately. When reviewing a credit report, look for evidence of collection accounts, late payments, bankruptcy, and current debt that may indicate that the tenant may have difficulty making rent payments. Number 5. Get in touch with previous landlords. You know what's a great way to get a feel of how the tenant acted as a resident and how they were able to handle their responsibilities? Get in touch with the tenant's previous landlords. Talking to previous landlords can provide valuable information about a potential tenant's rental history, including whether they paid rent on time, caused any damage to the property, had any debt, or were a nuisance to their neighbors. Asking specific questions about these issues can help you get a better sense of whether a potential tenant is likely to be a good fit for your rental property. The landlord will be able to give you an honest opinion about whether or not the tenant was reliable and trustworthy, or if they were irresponsible and caused trouble for other tenants in the building. If you ask enough questions, you'll also be able to find out whether or not the landlord would want them back as a tenant again. Previous landlords can also be asked whether they would allow the tenant to rent their property again in the future, which can be a helpful indicator of the tenant's overall track record. Number 6. Talk to the tenant's employers. Before you decide to rent your property to someone, it's a good idea to ask their employer for a reference. This way, you can learn about the tenant's character and work ethic. Ask if there have been any issues with the tenant, such as tardiness or absences. If they have been absent often, this could be an indication that they will be absent from your property as well. Not only that, ensure that a tenant has a stable source of income in order to be able to afford the rent payments on your property. To verify employment and income, you can ask for a recent payslip or contact the tenant's employer directly. While employers may not be willing to share detailed private information, they should at least be able to confirm whether the tenant is currently an employee. This can help you ensure that the tenant is financially stable and able to afford the rent on your property. Number 7. Interview the tenant. When you talk to your potential tenant, make sure that they are going to be a good fit for your property. You want someone who will take care of the property and pay their rent on time. You also want someone who will respect your property as well as other people who live there. So when you meet with the prospective tenant, make sure you ask them questions about how they feel about these things. The purpose of this step is to verify that all information provided by the tenant on their application matches with what they say during the interview, as well as with what you know about them from previous steps in your tenant screening process. You want to make sure that everything checks out before you move forward with renting to this person. However, again, you have to be mindful of the Fair Housing Act, which prohibits landlords from discriminating on the basis of certain protected characteristics such as race, religion, national origin, and disability. Some questions that you might consider asking during an interview might include the tenant's plans for getting housemates in the future, whether they own any pets, and whether they are house-trained, their smoking and drinking habits, whether they work odd hours or night shifts, and whether they will have relatives and friends sleeping over frequently. These questions can help you get a better sense of the tenant's lifestyle and whether they are likely to be a good fit for your rental property. The bottom line is that screening tenants can make the difference between a smooth rental process and one riddled with problems. So what are some other ways to properly screen potential tenants? Let me know in the comments section below, and if you found this content valuable, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more of our upcoming videos. In fact, we created a video here that will explain exactly what mistakes you should avoid if you want to be a successful landlord. So click the video on the screen now, and we'll see you in the next one.